Well, thanks everybody for joining us. We have a small group, but we can get some education out there, and this will be recorded, and there will be a link on the website so everybody can watch if you missed out. I have Kelly Dundon with me, and we're going to be discussing mental health and the benefits of entheogenic plant medicines tonight.
Yeah, hey everybody. Thank you so much for having us. So like Jessica said, my name is Kelly Dundon. We'll go ahead and introduce ourselves first. But first, we just want to say we're so glad that you're here. And today's conversation is going to provide a comprehensive but balanced overview on some of the research and information about plant-based entheogens and mental health, fostering informed dialogue and community understanding. So we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go along. First, I want to introduce myself. So like I said, my name is Kelly Dundon. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and practicing psychotherapist. I'm also a support line supervisor at Fireside Project that provides live and integration support for folks through their psychedelic experiences. I'm also a coalition member with Decriminalizing, which is who we're here with tonight. But more importantly, I'm a sister, I'm an auntie, I'm a daughter, a partner, a friend, an advocate, a thinker, and a feeler. And I love psychedelics, but I also love a lot of other things. I like plants, plant medicines, cooking, ceramics, letters, being a homebody, staying inside, and also being outside. So we're going to hopefully share more about ourselves tonight, as well as a broad understanding of some of these medicines.
Right, and hello. My name is Jessica Fitzmaurice, and I'm a registered nurse. I've got 5 kids, and I love nature. I'm a community advocate for Decrim Nature. I also am certified in psychedelic therapies and integration through the VITAL program. And my hobbies include yoga, mountain biking, kayaking. I love to learn about all kinds of things. I love to make crafts. My newest hobby is hunting for crystals, and I love spending time with my friends and family and my pets, and lots more.
Yeah, so first we want to set the stage about why this conversation matters, but I'll also add to we're a small group, but if you're joining us also live on Zoom, feel free to jump in and ask us questions or say things. This is really a conversation, not just a presentation. So with that said, so why does this conversation matter? So we're talking about the mental health benefits of entheogenic plants. And why that matters is that mental health is a crisis. 1 in 5 US adults will experience a mental health illness every year. So that's 20% of people. You probably know someone that's experienced a mental illness. Some of the most common conditions in the US are anxiety disorders, major depressive episodes, and post-traumatic stress disorders. As we talk more, we'll hear about how entheogenic plants specifically have been used to treat some of these conditions. We do know that people with depression are at a high risk of cardiovascular and metabolic diseases. So that basically lets us know that mental illness doesn't just affect our mind, but it also affects our bodies. We also know that over 1/3 of US adults with a mental illness will also experience a substance use disorder. So having these mental illnesses is not just isolated to one depressive episode or feeling anxious. It really affects our whole well-being and our livelihood. And including like the way that we live. So people with mental illnesses are at an increased risk, for example, with unemployment and homelessness. So mental illness really affects our whole well-being, our whole body, our whole livelihood. And that's why this conversation is so important tonight.
Next, we can jump right into the historical and cultural context of plant medicines. These have dated back thousands of years. Entheogens have been used for thousands of years in spiritual and healing practices, as we all know, and indigenous cultures have deep-rooted traditions with plant medicines. So historical use really spans all continents and cultures. And where, may you ask? For example, the Amazon rainforest, there's some cultural groups there that use ayahuasca in ceremony. Mexico and Central America, these cultures use peyote and mushrooms. Africa, the Witi people, they use iboga in their ceremonies. And here in North America, tribes like the Navajo use peyote. And these plants are part of their cultural and spiritual traditions. Their use is often guided and experienced by experienced leaders within those communities.
So now that you know a little bit more about some of the medicines that we're talking about today and the reason why these plants are so important, we also want to give a broader intention and disclaimer for our conversation. So like we said earlier, this conversation is really to provide helpful information and to facilitate a conversation, but we are not providing medical advice or recommendations. We're not endorsing or encouraging the use of any illicit substances. And it's also important to name that most entheogenic plants are still federally classified as Schedule I substances. So all that to say, this is a complicated conversation.
So for those of you who don't know what an entheogen is, the word entheogen comes from the Greek word entheos, meaning God within. So entheogens are substances that are believed to generate a divine or mystical experience within an individual. And these substances have historically played significant roles in various indigenous cultures and spiritual practices. Entheogens are distinct from recreational drugs, as their use is often tied to spiritual or ritualistic purposes. And the effects of entheogens can vary significantly depending on the substance, dosage, individual, and setting. So we'll just go over some examples of plant-based entheogens. We've got ayahuasca, which is a brew made from, this word is so hard to pronounce, the Banisteriopsis capi vine and other plants. They're mixed together and they're used in Amazonian shamanic traditions. More commonly, we've got the psilocybin mushrooms. Those are fungi that contain psilocybin, which is a psychoactive compound. Peyote or mescaline containing cacti, which are used in Native American religious ceremonies. And it's also really important to understand that the use of these cacti have very long histories within certain cultural contexts. Ibogaine, I think, is less commonly used around here, but it's also a psychoactive substance found in the root bark of the Tabernath iboga shrub, which is native to Central and West Africa. And it's also been used for centuries in traditional ceremonies by the Witi people of Gabon. So just to break down how entheogen plant medicine work in the brain, they affect neurotransmitters in your brain. And a neurotransmitter, they are like messengers that help brain cells communicate. Hey, welcome.
Here, I'm gonna sit here.
We were just talking about probably one of your favorite topics, how entheogenic plant medicines work in the brain. Well, something you're really probably good at talking about. Yeah. So changes in neurotransmitters can lead to altered states of consciousness, increased empathy, and enhanced creativity. Some entheogens promote neuroplasticity, and that is the ability of the brain to change and adapt. They also may decrease activity in the default mode network, which could help you focus more on the present, like a reset.
You may have heard of the term set and setting. We want to provide a little context for what that means. So set and setting is a term that you'll hear often when talking about preparing for and also being within a psychedelic experience, including with plant medicines. This was a concept that emerged in the 1960s amidst psychedelic substance research. And it's a term that's widely accepted and used in scientific and academic settings, as well as in lay communities. So just community settings. Set really means, you can think of it as like your mindset. So it's the personality, the preparation, the expectation, and the intention going into a plant medicine or entheogenic plant experience. So it's really like what you're doing on the internal, your mind, your intention before going into an experience, as well as just like where your head is at when you're in an experience. The setting is more external, thinking about the physical space. So it could be the actual physical space where you are, but also the social environment of who's with you, who's holding the space with you, who are you journeying with, and also the cultural environment, which would mean like maybe like what is the vibe of the community that you're in terms of accepting of these medicines, or the cultural environment of the space. There are places where there's ayahuasca churches, and so that would be the cultural environment of that church. So set and setting, you can think mindset and then setting the physical space. So the internal and the external, and how those things are really showing up in this plant medicine experience. Safety is important in both of these aspects. So like safety of your mind, of like maybe what you're expecting or how prepared you feel or how comfortable you feel in your physical body and in your mind. And then safety is also important from the setting perspective of like, is the physical environment actually safe? Is there anything around here that could hurt me or that could cause harm during this experience? So we really want to name that safety is important in both of these aspects. It's also important to talk about what are the effects of psychedelics or plant medicines, entheogens. And it's important because if you don't know, then you might be surprised, or someone might be talking to you about an experience and it might sound like a little, wow, okay, what was that? Different. But psychedelics essentially alter and enhance our sensory experience. So that means it changes the way that we perceive visual stimuli, auditory stimuli, even sound and touch and taste. All of these things at the bare minimum are altered and changed, but they might also be enhanced, meaning they become more intense. There's an increased awareness or understanding of self, of space, of time, just like a deep knowing or understanding maybe of something that's important to you, or just an awareness you're having about existence. You might also notice with psychedelics that there's a change in physical energy levels, whether that means becoming more energetic or maybe becoming more lethargic. People within a psychedelic experience or a plant medicine experience will name that they've had spiritual or transpersonal experiences. So thinking about experiences that feel bigger than just ourselves and bigger than what we can really like put our hands on and say, this is something real or tangible. That might be spiritual, that might be existential. And then also these feelings of connectedness to self and to others and to the universe. So you often hear people say things like, we're all connected or we're all one. And you might also see images like the one at the bottom here that almost looks like a fanning out of like many faces, or like this interconnected being. And that's really representative of a lot of the experiences that people name through plant medicines. Yeah, a little bit more on that to give more context. People also report feeling really relaxed, having introspection, altered perceptions of time and space. So you might hear things like, time feels like it's going really fast, or it's going really slow, or my whole life flashed before my eyes, or my whole lineage. So time starts to feel fluid in this different way. You might also notice like an altered cognitive experience. So that could feel like feeling really confused, like what's going on, or this doesn't make sense, or an impulsivity to take action in a certain way that maybe you wouldn't normally. And then it's also really common for people to feel euphoric, like really happy or just filled with joy or bliss. At the same time, these medicines can increase your vulnerability and your suggestibility. So that means you might be more vulnerable to certain information or to suggestion, whether that be, hey, you look cold. Do you want a blanket? Oh my gosh, yeah, I am cold. And now you start to feel even more so. So that vulnerability and suggestibility, we'll talk more about how that can also be like a risk and a challenge when it comes to plant medicines. And then synesthesia is this idea of like where your senses start to blend. So maybe you're seeing music or you're tasting color. That's something that is really common when you're working with plant medicines. And then finally, just a lot of changes in the physical body, nausea, changing of breath, muscle weakness, your body temperature may fluctuate, changes in your sleep and your appetite. And again, we'll talk about how these can also be some of the challenging aspects of working with these plants. A term that feels really important to name is non-ordinary states of consciousness. And so a non-ordinary state of consciousness, to give a little more context, is not just with plant medicines, but it can also be things like in meditation or breath work or prayer, massage, fasting, daydreaming. It's basically just thinking about being outside of that sort of status quo level of consciousness. And plant medicines take us to those spaces in a pretty intense way and in a quicker way. And so just sort of naming that term, because you might hear it more as you're hearing about entheogenic plants and about psychedelics. But let's see, a couple thoughts on this. Yes, in a non-ordinary state of consciousness, our awareness is focused in a different way. So that may mean all of a sudden your hand starts looking really different that it's never looked before. And you don't normally pay attention to your hands in that way. But now in a non-ordinary state of consciousness, you're becoming aware of your hands or the grass or the sun in this way you don't normally. So our awareness can kind of tunnel vision in this different way. You might also notice this interconnectedness of your thoughts, your emotions, and your intuition in ways that are not normally available to you. You may also have access to ordinary reference points, like we talked about time and space, but also sensation and reality might start to switch or alter. So non-ordinary state of consciousness is a good just catch-all term to kind of understand what it feels like to be in a plant medicine journey. And we're going to talk a little bit about why this is important for mental health. So we'll talk a little bit about some of the research and potential applications of these medicines. We'll talk quite a bit about psilocybin, at least in my slides, because that is a plant medicine that there's been a lot of research on and used in a variety of contexts. But psilocybin has been used a lot to treat mental health conditions because it has low physiological toxicity and a low abuse potential, which means that it's a pretty safe medicine for people to use. There's a lot of studies that talk about psilocybin. I included the source at the bottom, but we'll just talk about a little bit today. In one study, it was that was looking to treat depression. Patients that were treated with psilocybin were experiencing enduring symptom relief from 1 month to a year, and that was after just 1 to 2 treatments. So that's pretty significant because 1 psilocybin journey, 2 psilocybin journeys, that's less than 24 hours of your whole life. To have then 12 months of relief is huge for some people. We also found in this study that supportive psychotherapy would increase the likelihood of symptom reduction, meaning it's not just about the medicine, it's also about the therapy that goes alongside it and the support and the processing of what this experience was about. Folks reported that there were perceptual changes in the way that they perceive themselves, maybe their illness, maybe their relationships in the world around them. They've had a different sense of their surroundings, their thoughts, and their feelings, which ultimately led to better clinical outcomes. Like Jess spoke about earlier, psilocybin activates receptors within brain cells that promote new brain cell connections. So this idea of neuroplasticity, which is really this idea that our brain can become flexible in this new way to adapt and change, which means that we can look at our thoughts and our feelings and our experiences in these different ways that can be really helpful and beneficial to our healing and to our growth. Another area that's really interesting is end-of-life care and illness anxiety. So this could be people that have chronic illness or late stage terminal cancer, psilocybin treatment led to a reduction in anxiety symptoms and an improved mood. So this is a really important way for folks who may be at the end of their life or may be facing that to get a new sense of their life, maybe the life ending or the life that they lived, to maybe feel a sense of peace or wholeness or even acceptance with what's happening. There was something here I really liked. It can enhance the quality of life and facilitate a dignified end of life experience. And I think that that's really important, is to be able to give people dignity and autonomy towards the end of their life. So in this particular study, where psychiatric or existential distress was present, so folks feeling really nervous about their life ending, psilocybin-assisted therapy was even able to alter some of the course of the illness and in some cases prevent progression. So it goes to show that mind-body connection, that when we're able to attend to some of those mental health issues, the physical body can also respond in positive ways. Psilocybin assisted therapy also showed effectiveness in treating demoralization. So again, like mood and existential distress among patients with AIDS. Novel pain therapy in advanced cancer patients, also psilocybin assisted therapy. And that was shown to reduce anxiety, depression, and fear of death. Do you want me to talk about this?
You can go ahead.
I can go. Okay. Yeah, another mental health area is PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. And you'll see a lot of PTSD studies among that are being treated with psilocybin or other plant medicines among veterans. And so they're obviously a vulnerable population, and they have a higher level of PTSD, depression, suicidality, all of these things. And so being able to find a really efficacious treatment is important for that group. So PTSD, in these studies, there was a highlight for the potential positive changes in one's personality, feeling connected, increasing openness and perspective taking, and having the psychological flexibility. So again, we're seeing this ability for folks to take these plants and to start to like create new ways of thinking about their trauma or pain that they've been through in their life, and be able to look at it, to reframe it, to reconceptualize it, and to ultimately find some peace and healing through that. We also saw that in some cases, this helped to extinct fear. So folks that suffer from PTSD, it might be holding them back from entering certain scenarios in their life or being in certain places around other people. And so being able to eliminate or minimize some of that fear can be life-changing. Some folks said that the psilocybin experience was an emotional breakthrough for them, and it improved long-term psychological changes. What we know about psilocybin is that it can decrease amygdala reactivity during emotional processing. So that means while you're maybe recalling a traumatic event. And so the amygdala is the part of the brain that is responsible for your emotions and things like fear and anxiety, but also that fight, flight, freeze, fawn response. So if you are someone who has PTSD, when that gets activated, you might go into this fight, flight, fawn, or freeze. And these medicines actually help to calm that part of the brain to be able to process the trauma in a different way.
There's also research with plant medicines for treating addictions. So right now, research is investigating the use of psychedelics to treat various addictions, including nicotine, alcohol, and opioid addiction. And some studies have suggested that psilocybin can help people overcome addictive behaviors by promoting changes in perspective and behavior. So I think that's just referring to the resetting the default mode network and just developing different behaviors over after having psilocybin therapy. Studies have been conducted on psilocybin effect on smoking cessation. So people that have been trying to quit smoking for years and can't do it with the traditional medications. They benefit from psilocybin. And then another important plant medicine researchers are working with is ibogaine, and that's showing really great potential in interrupting the addiction process, particularly to opioids. The studies show that it reported reduced withdrawal symptoms and cravings to the opioids. Research suggests it may affect addiction-related pathways in the brain, so binding to those opioid receptors and just canceling them out, basically. That there's a slide at the bottom of the page if you need a reference, if you want to look at the study article. But I think treating addictions is important because a lot of people we know personally suffer from addictions, and they end up in jail because of it, and their families are affected, and their lives are just affected. So a lot of research is going on, but it's tricky to hold those studies because of the legal red tape. The substances are often heavily restricted, making it hard for scientists to study them because it's a Schedule 1 substance. Think of it like trying to research a rare plant that's locked in a vault. Also, another reason why research is hard right now is because of the stigma, old myths and fears. A lot of people have negative ideas about psychedelics and plant medicines from hearing stories, even if they're not true. And it makes it harder to get support for research because of the social stigma around psychedelics and the fear. Some study challenges include it's hard to create fake versions of these experiences for comparison, and everyone reacts differently to these plant medicines, so studies are often complicated, and it's hard to know the long-term effects because we just don't have the long-term research out right now. But it's important that we always keep safety first, and researchers need to be very careful about the potential risks. They must ensure participant safety and follow strict ethical guidelines and protocols. And Kelly, never mind. Cardiac risks are a concern for some substances, mainly ibogaine.
Yeah, we mentioned before that plant medicines can be great and there can be a lot of awesome benefits, but there can also be challenging experiences. And it's good to know what those things are, just so that we're giving really a full view of these medicines. And also to name like what challenging experiences are also normal. So some folks, whether that be in the midst of an experience or after, may have a challenging time with normal functioning. And so that could be things like getting back into the swing of life. That could be things like managing your appetite, your diet, your sleep, just the normal functionings of being a human. We talked about too less access to reality or ordinary reference points. Sometimes people can go into a psychedelic experience and reality feels really different and really weird, and that can actually be scary. And so in some ways that can be sort of like liberating because maybe this curtain feels like it's being lifted off and you're seeing reality in this different way. And in other ways that can be like frightening. So that is a potential negative outcome. Some folks too may name that they have like a diminished capacity to express themselves or their needs. So it can be common in a plant medicine experience to like lose sight of what your physiological needs are. Like, am I hungry? Am I thirsty? Do I need to use the bathroom? How do I ask for those things? That can also be altered in these states. Again, we talked about distortions in time and space, so things can start to feel surreal or unreal. And oh, well, those don't seem too challenging. Greater capacity to heal. Okay, that's a good one. I'm not sure that got on there, but yes, you can also find that there can be a greater capacity to heal within plant medicine experiences. Mystical states and spiritual emergence. These are things that can be beautiful and wondrous and amazing, but if that is not something you're expecting or looking for, or maybe arrives to you in a different way than you were expecting, it can feel unsettling. Maybe spiritual experience wasn't what you were looking for. You just wanted some mental health healing. And when that spiritual experience comes around, it can be jarring. It can also be really common in a plant medicine experience for there to be these spontaneous or bizarre instances of self-expression, movement, sound, or behavior. You might hear that people make strange noises when they're on plant medicines. Maybe they're crying, maybe they're yelling, maybe they're not really making any sense, but sound is coming out. These things are all really normal, but they can also seem bizarre to the person that is expressing them, as well as the people that are around them. Let's see. The unconscious becomes conscious. That is a big thing with plant medicines, is that there can be material in your mind and your spirit that is unconscious that you're not really aware of. And then the plant medicine brings it into the conscious, into the present moment. And sometimes that material, you didn't know it was there, you weren't ready for it, or you don't know how to deal with it. And that brings even more importance to this idea of support, to integration, to communities like we have here with Decrim, to be able to just name some of these experiences and get support so that folks don't feel so alone if that's something that they're facing. That goes hand in hand with this idea of deep truths, pain, and trauma can be unearthed through plant medicine experiences. And if you don't have the structure, the support to handle that, that can be painful. Regression can happen within a plant medicine journey. It's not all healing in progress. Sometimes people find that they fall back, or that the experience was challenging and now they have a whole new thing to deal with. And that can also be normal. It can be upsetting, but again, it brings even more importance to community support, integration, which we didn't name before, but integration is this idea of being able to process and experience and make sense of it. And so when these challenging experiences happen, that level of support becomes even more important. Okay, yeah, integration. Okay, is this mine? Losing track. Okay. Yeah, okay. So like we said, integration. Integration is allowing time for unfolding and meaning making. So that means after an experience, whatever happens after that, whether that be talking about it, writing about it, even like making changes in your life that are integrating the information that you took from your journey. Things that are important in integration is allowing time for there to be empathy and non-judgment. So that means from peer to peer. I think I have client language on there, so sorry about that. But basically, non-judgment in the integration process, whether that mean me and Jess are talking and she's holding non-judgmental space for me to just let anything come up. It's also highlighting your inner wisdom. So meaning that you have knowledge and wisdom and maybe even answers inside of you that are just inherent to who you are, and giving space for that to emerge and come out. Again, also creating space for regression, meaning that sometimes things might start to feel worse or not feel good or feel worse in a new way. That's okay. That may also be part of the integration process of maybe releasing some of that, or looking at it in this new way. We also want to empower people to lean on their support system, whether that be folks that are familiar with plant medicines, or maybe your partner or family member that just wants to be there for you. We want to really empower our protective factors. So that means things like what keeps us motivated in life. Maybe that means our family, maybe that means the work that we do, the environment, social justice, things that we are inspired by and that keep us sort of going as people, we want to really like hone in on those and make those important to us, especially in this integration time. Yeah, coping and processing, these are all important parts of integration. Some people like to say there's no bad trips. I think that's up for debate. I think it probably depends on the person that you ask. But it can be useful in this idea of integration to not label something good or bad, but just what it is, and then trying to make sense of it. In integration, we want to hold, respect, and validate the experience of the person that's integrating. So if I come to Jess to integrate an experience, I know that she'll respect me, she'll hold the space, and she'll validate that what I'm experiencing is valid, it's okay, it's understood, and it's accepted. It's important too to kind of know some of the things we talked about before about what a plant medicine journey could look like and what those things that may be elicited are, so that if we're integrating, I can normalize for Jess and she can normalize for me. Like, yeah, when you didn't know if you wanted water, you wanted a blanket, totally normal. That happens. You were figuring out and trying to assess your needs. Yeah, that wouldn't happen maybe on a day-to-day basis, but you took a substance and things were different. That's normal. And being able to say those things to one another helps to maybe dial back that pressure that something was off or weird or wrong. And then finally, in integration, just seeking help and resources as you need. So if the help means talking to more people or talking to a mental health professional, that's great. Maybe it means being in community like the decrim folks and being able to just, again, talk about our experiences. Oh, we're at the end. I love this photo. I didn't see this one.
You're welcome. I had a request to leave this picture in last presentation. It's Ben Stiller deciding if he needs big pharma or plant medicines in his
I was
life.
wondering, like, is that supposed to be Ben Stiller?
He's an advocate of plant medicine. Yes.
And they had to create a thing for us, like
I love that.
like this used to be on like pharmaceutical medication. So
Got
it was just
it.
so sad. And then you like tried, plant medicine.
I love
Create
that.
picture, and it's just funny that it's kind of a funny picture.
It's like Severance. I don't know if you've seen
That is a good show.
He's the director, so
Okay, that makes sense.
that makes it sound very psychedelic.
I like knowing that you guys set out to make this image. Okay, thanks for listening, you guys. Any questions or just like thoughts on any of this material or content that we talked about?
First of all, that was very good and very dense.
Yeah.
I think that's a ton of information.
Mhm.
for sure.
Yeah,
So thank you.
yeah, absolutely.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Kelly.
thank you.
It's a great reminder of a lot of things that maybe I've heard before, but it's good to go through like comprehensive version of everything. So
Yeah,
very well done.
thank you. Thanks, yeah. Yeah, hopefully it'll just be a good resource for folks to look at too, just the slides and like do their own research.
Throw a
It's a good
question.
idea to share in slides.
Yeah. The sources are on there too. Sorry.
I'll throw a question. How much is too much?
I mean, I think that's like just probably depends on the person and probably depends on like the context. And I don't know, I mean, if it was in like a clinical setting, there'd probably be a certain amount, but I think otherwise, like it's really up to a person to decide, right? I think that's like a lot of like the psychedelic movement is like empowering people to make their own decisions. There's always going to be an edge where it's going to be too much, but yeah.
Like, are you expanding your life or minimizing?
Yeah.
Finding
Well, and like James Fadiman says, start low and go slow. I mean, the same rule applies to microdosing to big dosing. You can always, if you're using mushrooms, dose more later if it's not effective. So,
Terrence McKenna said message.
yes, I like that.
Yeah, totally.
So, yeah, there is, I mean, I think there are some red flags I've seen around where you're sort of driving towards something that you're not quite reaching,
Mhm.
And you're kind of getting, your world's shrinking or you're getting more disconnected. So,
or you're bypassing and not doing the integration
Right.
to like and seeking that, like you're seeking something but you're not integrating it, but if you were to sit down and integrate it, you'd actually find what you're seeking
Yeah.
rather than the constant pursuit of
Mhm.
that thing that you're just not being patient with yourself.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, yeah, so real. Yeah, that term bypassing of just maybe being in the journey and in the medicine just to be in it, but not for whatever you're actually gaining from it. You're just maybe using it just to get out of your own head, but then you're not receiving the messages.
Gotta take time to integrate all that hard work you just did.
Mhm, mhm.
I think a lot of us do know the feeling of escaping, right? There's, some activity, whether we feel like we're addicted to it or not. We know what the feeling is we're escaping versus, seeking or learning.
Mhm,
So I think that, that's probably red flag too. We feel like
Yeah.
I need to get out of this reality and back into that one. Well,
Yeah.
Another thing that I was thinking about is like, well, like the preparation thing, like a lot of people do not have the tools inside of themselves
Mhm,
to like experience something sometimes, like as we like go through these traumas, we close ourselves off
mhm.
and we don't have the tools or the embodiment in ourselves to experience that. So if you're just taking these substances, you're not like,
Yeah.
you just don't have those tools of preparation, it's
Mhm.
super important
Yeah,
to just like learn about it.
totally. Yeah, yeah. That's setting work, including the embodiment piece.
I have a question, and I'm really curious kind of what the clinical
Mhm,
take is on it. I struggle with what the right balance is between preparing somebody for
Mhm.
what they might experience versus over preparing or priming them with things
Mhm.
that they might be looking for, or maybe they experience what they don't really need to, or they get disappointed if it doesn't happen.
Mhm,
Like it sounds like the way that you're talking is you try to prepare somebody
mhm.
a lot, right? But then how do you avoid over preparing or priming the experience too much?
Yeah, I mean, I think like the preparation is so, like Erin was saying too, so individual to the person and like why they're having this experience and maybe what the intention is, if there's the intention there. And I think like information about like safety is really important and like what you might expect in your body and in your mind. But I think it's also useful to think about like what is the purpose of the information that I'm providing to them? And am I maybe inserting some of my like expectations, their experience that is like making me overcompensate some of the information. And I think it's probably different from like a clinical setting to like a community setting where that looks different. Right. Yeah.
Self-education, like
Mhm.
you give them all the safety and
Yeah.
risk management things, like
Yeah.
to protect people
Mhm.
and so do that, but then be like, but also self-educate, encourage them to self-educate,
Mhm.
because then as they're self-educating, they're really following by what they're searching, what they're looking up, their truth, like what their intentions are of it, and that's what they're gonna get back,
Mhm,
is what
mhm.
they're searching.
Yeah, like self-selecting the information that they're interested in versus like being inundated with too much information. Is that what, yeah, I like that.
The direction that
They want to go.
It's
Yeah, yeah,
Well,
self-learning sort of thing.
I
Totally,
think it's
totally.
really important though that somebody just, for all the preparation you're going to help them with when they're actually on the journey feeling safe. That's ultimately what's
Mhm.
going to save you from like just looking into it too deeply, I guess.
Mhm.
Maybe as long as the person is feeling safe during the
Mhm.
journey, I think you did okay with your preparation work,
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, because I think in a clinical setting too, there's more of like a protocol of like share this and then this and like there's really a list so you don't deviate from that. But probably in a different setting, you can also just ask like, how's this information landing with you? Like, does this feel like this is enough information? Do you feel like we should pull back? Is there something you're still curious about? And like giving plenty of space within that feels useful.
Yeah, because everybody's gonna have their own experience for sure.
Yeah, totally, totally.
See what we've
Speaking
got
of
on
all
the
this, I
next
think we have a
slide.
couple.
Oh, yep, we
Yeah.
do have some upcoming events, and I'm gonna let you talk about these events right here.
Perfect.
because-
So these flyers look very similar, but they are different. So this is two integration workshops through Holos Collect. perspectives. So the one on the left is psychedelic integration for therapists. It's a 90-minute session led by Angie Leek, and it's going to be an introduction to integration, how to offer support to clients, and how to navigate challenges with clients. You can follow the QR code or check out Holos Collective to find out more about both of these events. The one on the right is more of a peer support workshop, and I'll be leading that one. And this is more so how to integrate with family and friends. So as the person providing support. So like if me and Jess want to integrate, or me and my partner want to integrate, how do we do that with one another in more of like a loved one scenario versus client and therapist? So there's 2 offerings there. And yeah, all the info is there, QR codes, and maybe we can link them too on Facebook.
Yeah.
Cool.
And then we've got a couple more big events coming up. First of all, the Libertarian Party of Arkansas is having their annual convention in Rogers on April 5th at the Candlewood Suites. And Decrim Nature has been asked to introduce themselves there. So we're going to be speaking at the Libertarian Party at their annual convention in April, just kind of introducing us and who we are in the community, hoping to get some more support. So, and then coming up in April, on April 19th, there's a psychedelic symposium in Tulsa, Oklahoma, called Open Plains, and there's going to be a lot of great talented speakers, some speakers with big names. So there's QR code there if you're interested. I know you have to buy a ticket to go. It's an all-day event, and the Libertarian Party convention, I believe, is free.
I'm not sure.
So
Can I make a comment about the Libertarian Party? So the decrim movement is a apolitical movement.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not aligned with any political party. Libertarian Party is political. So,
yeah.
And so what we, so it's not that, we just don't want to give the impression that we are aligned with them politically.
Yeah.
It's just that we overlap in a very important idea that no one should be going to jail for plant medicines. We all believe very strongly that in that ideal that we can work together on helping that happen. So,
yeah,
It's a good
thank
distinction.
you, Joseph.
Yeah.
I apologize, I have to leave early, but wanted to come and support.
Thanks for being
You're
here.
awesome.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thanks
Good to
for
see
coming.
everyone.
Yeah, likewise.
Ooh.
Looking
Grab
forward
some
to the next
fruit.
one. Next one's in Fayetteville,
Fayetteville, next
kind of like
month.
same day, same time thing.
Yep, the third
third
Tuesday of
Thursday.
every
First
month.
Tuesday. Okay.
Yep.
It's some new location.
Oh, you don't have the library? I thought you said that.
Well, we don't have the library because it costs a lot of money to rent
expensive.
there. It was only like $12 to rent the library here, but yeah, we're gonna be,
we have a spot. We have a venue.
not yet. We still need to figure that one out, so.
That's
Yeah,
why we
I
have
could help coordinate, and look around too. I know that Beth had reached out, so.
Yeah,
Cool.
that'll be good.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of people out of woodworking in Fayetteville.
Yeah.
This is a popular topic. That's it.
Well, great. Thank you guys.
Thanks.
Bye, Justin.